Hi guys, it's Andrew from the South Allegheny Recording Studio. Today, I want to take you through all the elements of the mix I did for my full cover of Everlong by the Foo Fighters. If you want to check out the full video, I'll include a link in the description below, and I'll put a little link on screen here. For this production, I recorded all the instruments, edited it, and mixed it over 3 days during Christmas break of 2021. I purposely gave myself a time limit with this project. You can spend forever tweaking things and making adjustments, but I wanted to make sure I had a deadline to stick to. As many of you working on your own projects will have your own deadlines. Also, I made it a point to use all the stock effects and plugins and try to use as many presets as I can, just to show you what kind of sound you could get without a lot of adjustment. So as you can see, I've got a lot of tracks on my screen, drums, microphones, guitars, etc. It may look really complicated, but once I go through it, hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. So let's get started with the drums. Okay, so I have my drum part here in red. This is the MIDI information from the drums MIDI track. I used the Roland TD-17 drum kit in the studio to record this part live, and I chose drums MIDI over the regular drums track because the sounds that were in the computer were better than the sounds coming out of the drum kit itself. That's why I chose drums MIDI. To learn more about audio tracks versus MIDI tracks, be sure to check out my video about audio versus MIDI tracks on the South Allegheny Recording Studio website. Here in the mix window, I've got all my drum tracks, also in red. I have tracks for the kick drum, the snare drum, the toms, and the hi-hat and cymbals. The drums MIDI track here is what's called a submix track. All of these separate drums are grouped together and fed into this one drums MIDI track. This allows me to adjust the volumes for all the drums with this one fader. I can also add effects to the drums MIDI track, and it will affect all of the other tracks in this group. Because I chose MIDI drums, I didn't need to make too much adjustment to the sounds out of the box. You may want to apply some effects of your own later for a different production, but in this case, I didn't need to. All I had to do was adjust the faders at the bottom here to get a nice blend of volume, and then I used the pan knobs up top to get a nice blend between the left and right speakers. The only thing I had to add to my drum tracks was this chromaverb reverb effect, set to the punchy room setting. I didn't do very much adjustment past that. I turned down the wet knob to 20%. I copied that same reverb effect to every drum track. On the drum submix track, I just added this compressor, and it's very lightly compressing the signal so it gets to be a little bit more consistent. So let's hear the drums by themselves. Next, let's move to the bass. I used the Fender Precision bass in the studio, and I used a guitar pick to pluck the strings instead of using my fingers. This is important because a guitar pick will add a little bit more grit and attack to the bass sound, which is great for rock music. First, I added this EQ, and I used the Electric Jazz Bass preset. You can see there's a pretty big boost here in the low end because it's a bass. The core fundamental of the tone sits about here at 100 Hertz. There's a little bit of a boost here around 700. There's a dip here around 2K, and that's to make some room in the higher frequencies for other instruments. I also added some compression, and I used the live bass preset in this case. So the threshold is set at -20, so that's when it starts to kick in whenever there's a signal at that level. The ratio is at 5.4 to 1, and I added 4.5 dB of makeup gain. When it squeezes that signal, I need to turn it up a little bit louder because it's been squeezed. Also, I've got the soft distortion on the distortion knob. Let's listen to the bass with and without compression, just so you can hear the difference. So here's without. And with. Did you hear that? There's a pretty big difference in that sound. The bass sounds much more present and beefy. Let's move to the guitar parts. Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters is well known for having a lot of layered guitar parts in his songs. Here I've got 7 different active guitar parts, but it doesn't sound like there are 7 different guitar players in the song. I've got a regular rhythm guitar part that I've played twice. That's more of a distorted sound. Let me play that for you. I've got the main lead guitar part, which is the clean rhythmic guitar part that kind of leads the song. I'll play that. And I've got the auxiliary guitar part, which takes care of some of the higher lead lines. I used the Fender Stratocaster guitar in the studio, and I got the bulk of the tone from adjusting the controls on the amplifier. First, I adjusted the volumes of each of the guitars to make sure they blended well together. Then I used the pan knobs to spread them out between the left and right speakers. Let's concentrate on the rhythm guitars first. Other than the volume and the panning, I added some effects to the rhythm guitar parts. I started here with the built-in pedal board effect that Logic has, and I added this graphic EQ pedal and the squash compressor pedal to affect the sound before it hit any of the other effects in this chain. Then I added a channel EQ. As you can see, I cut all the low end out below about 80 Hertz, and I cut all the high end past about 8 kilohertz. And I added a slight boost in the middle to give it more of a fundamental tone. Then I put a compressor on the track. In this case, I used the Guitar Electric preset. So the threshold's at negative 28.5, the ratio's at 6.6, and I have 4 dB of makeup gain, again with the soft distortion. Let's compare the guitar sound before and after the compression. So here's without. And with. Can you hear how the compression beefs up the sound of that guitar? Finally, I added a gain plugin. This increases the input signal by whatever amount you choose based on this knob right here. In this case, my signal was a little too soft coming in, so I added 5 dB to it. You normally have to be careful with this, as too much gain may distort your signal, but because it's a Foo Fighters song, I figured the extra grit wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Now let's move to the lead guitar. So I adapted a similar process for my lead guitar parts. I started here with my pedal board. This time I didn't add the EQ or compressor, I just added this vintage Overdrive pedal to give it a little bit more push. Here's what it sounds like without it. And here's what it sounds like with. Next, I added a channel EQ, and this time I used the Classic Guitar Improve preset. You can see it actually put a little bit of a boost in the low frequencies, a dip around 450, and a big boost around 3.5 to 4,000 kilohertz. The boost in the high frequencies made the guitar sound brighter, which is usually good for a lead guitar. Then I added a compressor. In this case, I used the Bright Guitar preset. So the threshold's here at negative 18.5, ratio of 5:1, and no makeup gain, again with the soft distortion on this knob right here. Altogether, the lead guitars sound like this. Now let's move to the auxiliary guitar part. I set it up very similarly to the rhythm guitar parts. Here's what it sounds like by itself. First, I added a pedal board with the same graphic EQ and squash compressor as the rhythm guitar. Then I added a channel EQ with that same low end cutoff and high end cutoff, as well as a little boost around the middle. And I added a compressor with the same Guitar Electric preset. Now all these guitars are being sent to this guitar's submix track. That means that all the guitar parts feed into this one track. Any effects that I add here affect all the other guitars that are being fed into it. So first in the chain, I have this exciter plugin. This is what's known as a saturation plugin, and it's named after what it does. It gives the sound a little bit more pizzazz. I use the sizzle preset here. Let's have a listen to all the guitars without the exciter and then with, so you can hear the difference. So here's without. And here's with. Pretty big difference there. It's giving the guitars a boost in the high mids and high frequencies, again to sound brighter. Then I added the Chroma Verb Reverb plugin with the Punchy Room preset here. I really like the way this Punchy Room preset sounded, so I used it all across my mix as the room that my instruments were playing in. Okay, so far I've gone through the drums, the bass, and guitar parts. Let's quickly listen to all three of those together without the vocals to see how far we've gotten. Okay, now let's move to the vocal tracks. I have three main vocal tracks here. I have Vocals 1, which is the lead vocal track. Vocals 2, which is a double of the same vocal part. It's a common trend in recording to sing the part once and then sing it exactly the same again on another track and then blend it in together to sound like there's a doubled part. It just makes it sound thicker. And then over here I have my harmonies part, which you can hear during the choruses. I'll play that for you by itself. Again, the only thing I'll ever ask of you. To achieve that high-pitched effect, I actually just sang the same part again from Vocals 1, moved it to a new track here, and then applied this vocal transformer. I moved the pitch up and something called the formant to make it seem like I had a higher voice. For the lead vocal, first I added a channel EQ. I cut out most of the low end, had a little dip here around 600 hertz, and then had a little bit of a dip here near 10K. I added a compressor. In this case, I did it myself as well. I set the threshold to negative 27.5. I bumped the ratio way up to 12:1, and I added 4.5 dB of makeup gain, again with the soft distortion on the distortion knob. Next, I added a pitch correction effect to help tune up any notes that I might have messed up. Admittedly, I'm not the world's strongest singer, so this helped me a lot. I know the song is in D major, so I set that here, and I moved this response slider down a little bit so it would correct me a little bit faster. If I were to move this slider all the way to the bottom, it would sound like I was being auto-tuned, which I didn't want for this song. Once I had all that figured out, I copied these effects to my second vocal track here. So it's got all the same effects. All these vocal tracks are being fed into the vocals submix track. Here I added another channel EQ where I cut out a lot of the low end and added a little boost to the top. I added another exciter plugin to give it a little bit of an edge. I added another compressor with the studio vocal preset, and I added a reverb from Chromaverb with the vocal room preset, again to make the vocals gel together. So first I'll play for you the vocals without any effects on, and then I'll turn them all back on so you can hear the difference. So here are the vocals without any effects at all.
If anything could ever feel this good again, the only thing I'll ever ask of you.
And here are the vocals with all the effects turned back on.
If anything could ever feel this good again, the only thing I'll ever ask of you. Gotta promise not to.
Okay guys, the last thing I added to this track was a sample of guitar feedback that happens during the bridge into the last chorus. Let me play that for you. Okay guys, that's an overview of how I mixed Everlong with the stock plugins and presets that come with Logic Pro. Now I'm going to play the whole song with the track so you can see what's happening as it's going along. Please check out my video of this song where you can hear this mix and see me playing all the instruments. Also, please check out the South Allegheny Recording Studio website for more videos, and I'll see you in the next one.